Okay, so there were these three soldiers, actually three policemen, and they were discussing the success and the expertise and the prowess and the professionalism of how great the police were in their country. Discussing, the American police said, our police are the best police. We can catch a guy after a theft. Within 2 days, we're able to nab any theft. We're able to find any thief. 2 days, we have some money and we take them and we imprison them within 2 days. The French policeman listens to that and says, that's nothing. In Paris, if someone steals something in 24 hours, he's arrested. And the KGB officer listening to them says, guys, by us, a day before the theft happens, we already know about the theft, the day before. There's a very unusual custom that we have on Night of the Seder. The custom is that children steal the Afikomen. And the question is, why are we encouraging children to steal? Theft, of course, is not a good thing. It's one of the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not steal. And the Talmud explains that this commandment is not only referring to highway robbery, it's not only referring to pickpocketing, it's even referring to stealing for a joke. You steal something from someone to frighten them. It's also considered prohibited biblically to steal even for a joke. The Talmud even brings the following rationale why someone would steal and negates it. Someone may steal because they're thinking, according to Torah law, when you steal something, you have to pay double. So someone may steal because they're thinking, I should steal because then I'll be able to give this person double. You're not allowed to do that either. You can't steal for a joke. You can't steal to frighten someone. It's prohibited anyways to cause anyone any pain and to cause any fear. But even in a good-natured way, it's prohibited biblically. So how come we are encouraging children to do this? Especially sometimes you tell a child to do something and it becomes their nature. Talmud says a story about Rav. Rav's wife gave Rav a very hard time. Whenever Rav asked for something, so his wife would do the exact opposite, whatever he wanted. When Rav would ask for beans, she would serve potatoes. When he would ask for potatoes, she would serve beans. So Rab Chia, their son, he realizes what's going on with mom, so he decided to do the following. Next time his father asked for beans, he told his mother, Dad asked for potatoes. And she served him the beans like he wanted. And Rav realized something's fishy. So Rav found out that indeed his son Rab Chia had lied. And he told his son, don't ever allow your tongue to say something which isn't true, because you may start for one reason and continue for another reason, and continue, and it stays with you. The similar way the Talmud says that time at time, when you taste the taste of thievery, you steal something, so that could stay with you. So the question is, how come we are encouraging our children every Seder, every year on Passover, to steal the Afikomen? What's the point of this? So just to briefly discuss how this custom works. Custom is, many people have, that when you get up to the point of the Seder called Yachatz, we break the matzah in half. So you put part of the matzah away for the Afikomen, the larger part you put it for the Afikomen, and the smaller part you leave between the two matzahs. So the Seder goes and Yachatz and Magid and Rachza, and you eat the matzah, and the end of the Seder is the last time you eat the matzah again, the Afikomen, and you want to eat the Afikomen, but lo and behold, you look for the Afikomen, and it's gone. And it used to be easier to get the Afikomen back. You could offer your child, $5 and get the Afikomen back. But today they hold out for bigger things. A child this day and age may ask for an Audi. You may ask for Aston Martin. You don't know what the children will ask for. The children ask after Corona, before Corona, a trip around the world, a cruise, Afikomen. So the question is, why are we doing this? Why are we encouraging them to steal? There's a famous story about the great tzaddik Rabbi Moshe. He was a great genius, even as a child, and he told his father that he stole the Afikomen from his father, and he held out for quite a big price. And his father gave everyone the Afikomen except for Rabbi Yonasan. So Rabbi Yonasan, he was extremely smart, so he had prepared for such an eventuality, and he had kept a piece of the Afikomen for himself in case Dad decides to pull his last card out. So, and this is something which has been done for generations, and it's not a halachic question. Halachically, there are certain instances where stealing as a joke is okay. For example, let's say steal the salami. In a summer camp or in recess, it's not really stealing. It's set up in a way that you're giving something and you agree. In a similar way, if the custom is a child's going to take the Afikomen, he's not really stealing the Afikomen. You are playing a game. You are giving them the Afikomen to steal. I had an uncle who was actually his yard site is coming up, who would make sure that no one stole his Afikomen. He would hide his Afikomen in a way that nobody would find it, or so he thought. Anyways, but the question is, why are not halachically? Halachically, you could find ways why it's kosher, and the person, the father, the uncle, the grandfather, he knows it's going to happen. He's prepared for it. He's putting Afikomen there with that intention. It's not stealing, according to the strict letter of the law. But the question is more of an ethical, moral question, an educational question. What are we putting into our children's minds? It's a Jewish custom. It has to have meaning. Now, Rashi says that the actual wording in the Talmud is chotfin hamatzah. They grab the matzah. The matzah is grabbed in order that the children should not fall asleep. The Talmud says that Rabbi Akiva, he would always continue teaching his class until the nightfall, and only 2 times a year did he end his class early. He would never say, okay, we're finished. Only twice a year. Once a year would be the day before Yom Kippur, so people should be able to go home and eat. And a second time was before Passover. So everyone would be able to sleep and be up for the night of the Seder. So you want your children to stay awake. So Rashi says, chot from the matzah, you grab the matzah. What's the meaning of grabbing the matzah? Rashi says 2 explanations. One explanation is you lift the tray of the matzah, as is customary, many people to lift the matzah up. Our custom is just to uncover the matzah, and which part of the Seder. Either way, we uncover the matzah, we lift the matzah up. That's what chot from the matzah means, or that's what Rashi says. Another explanation of grabbing the matzah, Rashi says, is you eat the matzah fast. Well, technically, halachically, you have to eat the matzah fast anyways. You're supposed to eat the matzah within 4 and 6 minutes. So you have to eat the matzah really quickly anyways. So Rashi says, why should eat the matzah so quickly? Not just because of the mitzvah of eating matzah. Matzah has to be eaten quickly, but you want the children to stay awake for the Seder, therefore you do it quickly. But there are other ways to understand that piece of Talmud. The way Rashi is presenting it, it's something that the adults should do. The adults should grab the matzah. They should eat the matzah quickly. They should lift up the tray of matzah, and all for the purpose of the children staying awake. But the Chok Yaakov says, based upon his understanding of Maimonides says the matzah is grabbed from a hand to hand. The Chok Yaakov, he was a Rav living in a rabbi in Prague about 400 years ago. He says the meaning of grabbing the matzah means that perhaps this is the source of the custom of stealing the Afikomen. You want the children to stay awake till the end of the Seder, and the Afikomen is only eaten all the way at the end of the Seder. So therefore, towards the beginning of the Seder, you let the child take the Afikomen so that they'll stay awake. But still, why can't we find a better way? Why can't we tell the children, if you stay awake till the end of the Seder, then I'll give you A, B, and C? Why steal? Why put that into the child's heart and mind? Actually, there are many great tzaddikim who shunned this custom. Rabbi Shalom Zalman Auerbach, he did not allow stealing in his house. The brisker Rav didn't allow theft in his house either. Didn't let anyone steal Afikomen. Rabbi Yosef, alav shalom, he also did not allow people to steal Afikomen. One of his grandchildren said that the way what they did in his household was that it's brought actually in the code of Jewish law. This custom, it's not done by everyone. This is his custom, that someone goes outside, the child goes outside, he knocks on the door, and they open the door and they say, hey, and the guy has to be carrying a load on his back. You open the door for the guy who's by the door. This is the custom. And you say, hey, how are you? And the guy says, I am fine. They say, where are you coming from? Where are you going? And he's supposed to say, I'm leaving Egypt and I'm going to Jerusalem. And then you're supposed to ask him, and what is on your back? And you're supposed to say, I'm carrying matzah. As it says in the Torah, they're carrying matzah al shichma, on their shoulders. That's the custom. And this particular grandchild said he didn't remember, and his grandfather had to help him. But either way, that's what he did to help his children stay awake. He did not want to do this custom of stealing the Afikomen. The Rebbe writes in the commentary in the Haggadah that one of the daughters of Marash once did this, and basically it was not done usually in the Rebbe's. The Rabbeim, all the tzaddikim, Chabad and Lubavitch never did this. It was once it was done, but the reason it wasn't done usually was because the reason they mentioned for the Talmud, if they taste thievery, then it could lead to other things. You don't want to give it the taste of theft in a child's mouth. The question, though, is conversely, from the Rebbe's language, the Rebbe says, you do not do this. We did not do this in the Rebbe's house. It sounds like it's not so bad. It doesn't sound like Rebbe doesn't say nobody should do it. Because this was not done in the Rebbe's house. But it sounds like it's not something that's so bad, and it is accepted custom. And the question is, what is the meaning of this custom? There are many things. Actually, in this week's Torah portion talks about the law of the karban olah, the olah sacrifice. And it says, Zot Torah ta'olah, this is the teaching of the olah. The Talmud says there's a time that the actual sacrifice is brought, this karban olah is brought, and there's a time you can only study about it. And Hashem says, I consider studying about it as good as if you brought the sacrifice. The Talmud in Tainit, page 27b, says a story about Abraham. Abraham speaks to God, and Abraham says to God, God, I know that my children will make mistakes, and I know that they're going to have a temple, and they're going to offer sacrifices, and the sacrifices will cause atonement for them. But I have a question. I know the temple is going to be destroyed, and they will no longer be able to offer sacrifices for you. So what should my children do when this temple is destroyed? God responds to Abraham, by your children studying about the sacrifices, I consider it as if they brought the sacrifices, which parenthetically to me is a very personally meaningful idea, because a lot of things that we're doing today are different than what we usually do. You know, we usually study Torah together. We usually have hamburgers and French fries and garlic mayo, and we sit together and we learn and we come face to face. And now there's just a virtual thing. We're doing this by Zoom. We're doing this by Facebook. You're going to watch us tomorrow. It's not live. It's not in person. It's not physical. And I think there's a great lesson from this Talmudic passage. I'll tell you why. The Sharbat Rabbim, he comments on the verse, this is a teaching of the Olah, of the sacrifice called Olah. This is the Olah. From the night, it shall be burnt till the morning. So the Sharbat Rabbim explains, there's a time you could do the sacrifice physically, practically. And there's a time, a nighttime, where the darkness of exile prevents you from doing that. And all you could do is the teaching of the sacrifice. You can't do it the regular way. You can just study about it. But if you do that in the nighttime, that will get you to the morning. It's true that things aren't done in a regular way. They are usually done. And Hashem is giving us a chance to do mitzvahs sincerely, not out of rote, not out of habit. We're doing them a different way. But the way to get to the morning is by doing the mitzvahs at the nighttime. The way to get to do the mitzvahs physically, in the real way. People think that we want to get back to normal. For Jews, just because we have a minyan and we have a shul, it's not normal. There's 207 mitzvot that we cannot do today. the whole Jewish system doesn't work in exile. So normal for the Jewish people is the temple is built in Yerushalayim. Normal is that there's Mashiach. Normal is that we're all living in Jerusalem with all of our brothers and all of the Jewish people who have been exiled. So the way to get to normal, the way to get to the normal of the redemption is going through the nighttime. By the virtual performance of mitzvahs that we do in exile, which now is even more virtual, all of a sudden the Zoom has become a household word. All of a sudden, everything that was just like we never did before. Now it's just a regular way to do things, but it's not regular. This is the way we do this in a nighttime to get to the morning. The morning is the morning of the Geula, the morning of redemption, the morning of Mashiach. So I mentioned this parenthetically. We're not going to actually steal the Afikomen. We're going to try to keep the custom of the Lubavitch, of Chabad, of the Briskerov, of Shazam Auerbach, but we're going to study about the meaning of this custom. There's something that we can learn from the meaning of this custom. Perhaps not the physical observance of the custom. You don't want to actually have your children steal, but let's learn about the meaning of stealing. What is the spiritual meaning of stealing the Afikomen? What does it have to tell us? So there is an explanation of Rabbi Shimon HaSefer. Rabbi Shimon HaSefer says there were actually 11 plagues. 11 plagues. What was the 11th plague? It sounds a little bit like chapter 11, United States. There were 10 plagues, right? At the end of the 10th plague, the Torah says, no dogs barked. No dogs barked. So all the thieves in Egypt realized that there's an opportunity here. The security system is down. So there was a major theft going on the night of the death of the firstborn. And the Egyptians woke up with an 11th plague that they discovered that all their savings have been stolen. So to commemorate the 11th plague, that's why we steal the Afikomen. That's what Rabbi Shimon HaSefer writes. Another explanation given by Minchas Eliyahu. Minchas Eliyahu writes the following explanation. Minchas Eliyahu says that Isaac was born on Passover. When Abraham fed the angels, it says in the Torah, Ugos matzos, loaves of matzah, lot. So that's the day they promised Abraham that the next year they're going to be able to Abraham and Sarah will bless the child. 1 year they put a mark in the wall, and they say when the son reaches this mark next year, that's when you'll have a child. So it was exactly on Passover when Isaac was born. When Isaac turned 123, 5 years before the age that his mother passed away. His mother passed away at the age of 127. So Isaac, the Talmud says you should always be concerned about your age when you reach 5 years before your parents. So 5 years before he reached 127, which was the year that his mother passed away, he was thinking about his future and his children's future, and he wanted to give his children a blessing. And it was Passover. And he wants to ask Esav, his beloved son, to bring him 2 goats, that he should eat the goats. And instead, his wife, Rivka, tells Yaakov that he should come instead of Esav, and he should get the blessings. And this works, and Isaac gives Jacob the blessings. And then when this is discovered, Isaac tells Esav, your brother has come, B'mirma. Rashi translates, your brother has come with wisdom and taking your blessing. That's what Rashi says. The word wisdom. Sorry about that. Someone keeps calling in. The Wi-Fi isn't so good over here, so I'm trying to rely on the phone Wi-Fi. Let's try this. Wi-Fi. Okay, I'll go back soon. All right. Can you hear me still? Okay, good. So So all right. 5 times the charm. I guess I should switch the synagogue Wi-Fi because it keeps on calling. All right. So this should hopefully this. All right. Let me try this one more. Tell me one more thing. Sorry about the guys. We've nailed to help a lot of people, but we need a lot more money to help everyone we can. And the gentleman was actually calling to help raise money for help people for Passover, but I'll call him back soon. Anyways, so the word that Rashi uses to explain what Jacob had done is wisdom. Why is it called wisdom? So the Minchas Yav explains that the word bemirma that Torah uses is numerically equivalent to the word afikomen. Afikomen. It was a night of Passover, and that's why Isaac wanted 2 goats. Who eats 2 goats for dinner? So he wanted 2 goats because on the Passover there's 2 sacrifices. One is called the Chagiga, and one is called the Pesach. So you want to have 2 goats for the 2 sacrifices, even though the temple wasn't built yet and the mitzvah wasn't given yet. But the Talmud says that our forefathers kept all the commandments even before they were given. So Isaac wanted to do this, and that's why he asked Jacob or Esau to bring him these 2 goats. And Jacob, with wisdom, he gave his father the afikomen. He gave his father the last meal you're supposed to have on the night of Passover. And since it's the last meal you're allowed to have, he's no longer able to go. But Esau came later and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to do the same thing with you. Sorry, I can't. I can't do anything more because the Passover Seder is finished." Apparently, the time for blessing was during the time of the Passover Seder, and once the afikomen was given, it was no longer possible for Isaac to bless Esau, and that's why only Jacob got the blessing. So that's why it was wise for Jacob, because he caused that the blessing should go in the right direction towards holiness and goodness towards Jacob, not towards Esau. That's another explanation. But now I want to share with you an amazing explanation. This is an explanation Rabbi Jacobson shared. I'm not sure what the source of this is, but it's an incredible explanation. Something which really, really hits home. Leaving Egypt spiritually, what does it mean? Leaving Egypt means to go beyond your limitations, to go beyond what you're used to. And chances are that you've heard those words before, and whether you've heard them in a Jewish spiritual context, or you heard them in a self-help context, or you heard that in a business context, or you heard that in a relationship context, and chances are that you've gone beyond your limitations before, and you've done something that was hard for you, and you've fallen from that place. And you may have fallen a second time and a third time. And the question is, what do you do after you fall so many times? It's hard to try again when you see you've fallen so many times. I want to share with you a letter of the Rebbe. If I could find it inside, I'll share with you the actual text of the letter. Otherwise I'll just paraphrase from what I remember this morning reading it. The Rebbe writes this person who is his exact problem. He says to the Rebbe that he's falling again and again. And the Rebbe says to him, you should stop thinking about this. You should stop thinking about this completely. And then the Rebbe continues, and Zelle tells him that the Rebbe continues and tells him that instead he should try to increase reciting words of Torah, reciting words of prayer, and try to influence his friends with love to come closer to God and his Torah, and to keep his health, because in order to do all of this, you have to have a healthy body, as Maimonides says. You have to be healthy. And then the Rebbe says, when you try to change a habit, a negative habit, that's become rooted in you for many years, it doesn't happen overnight. And you need to pray to God that little by little, you should be able to overcome this. And so, and the Torah says, little by little, I will divorce this negative trait from you, but it takes little by little, it takes prayer to ask God to help you, and don't expect it all to happen at once. So in other words, what the Rebbe is telling this person is not to shoot for perfection. He's telling him to try to get a little bit better, to try to feel good about the small victories. In a way, what the Rebbe is telling him is to steal the Afikomen. I'll tell you what I mean. The Talmud says a story about Rabbi Amram Gain, Rabbi Amram Chassidah. There were many women who were captured, and in captivity, there was efforts made to free them, and they were freed. Before they were taken home, they wanted to have them stay in a safe place, and there was no Marriott at that time, so where all these girls were going to stay. So they decided they're going to stay in the house of Rabbi Amram. Amram is a very honest, pious Jew. They'll be safe in his house. So they stayed at the second floor in his attic, and just to make things safer, he took the ladder away from the roof, so you shouldn't be tempted to go up to the attic and to sin with him. In the middle of the night, Rabbi Amram climbs to the second floor of the attic. He's halfway up the ladder, and as he's climbing up the ladder, he screams out, "There's a fire in Amram's house! Amram's house has a fire! Come help! Everybody, fire, fire!" He realized he was going to make a big mistake, and he wanted people to be there. As Rabbi Yochanan says, that our fear of God should be at least as good as our fear of people. When people are there, you want to do the right thing. So he summoned everyone so that he would be able to have the wherewithal to get control of himself, so he shouldn't make that grave error. Yosef HaTzadik. Torah says that Yosef refused to sin with Potiphar's wife. But the way the Torah describes that refusal is with the word vayimain. Vayimain means to refuse, but the word vayimain has on it the zigzag truck, the zigzag cantillation that goes something like this. Vayimain. It's a tune which you can see the tension in the tune, back and forth, back and forth. Huh?
Shalshelis.
So the tune of Vayimayin, the Shalshelis, is a very ambivalent tone. So one explanation of this is that Yosef was actually not sure what to do, and he was torn between being faithful to his father and to what was right, and to have this woman be his second mother, who could open up the doors for him and free him from bondage and let him be. Instead, he chose the right choice, but it wasn't easy. It was a stolen choice. The being stolen means you don't have ownership of it yet. It's not yours. It's not something you're comfortable with and you identify with. It's stolen. It's something that comes with ambivalence, with insecurity, with challenge, grading, forcing, pushing. This is what happened when we left Egypt. Moses told the Pharaoh, we want to leave for 3 days. Now, was 3 days ever the plan? Pharaoh believed them. Okay, 3 days? Okay, 3 days. After 3 days, Pharaoh was told, he sent a spy, hey, they're not coming back. They're not coming back? So the Pharaoh runs after them. Why did Moses go through this whole thing of saying one thing and doing something else? Why it takes away from the whole majesty of the departure from Egypt. We always talk about how God took us out of Egypt with a mighty hand, and he did, plague after plague. And the reason why the Pharaoh agreed wasn't because of the 3-day deal. He expected Moses to keep his word, sure, but it wasn't because it was 3 days that he accepted. He accepted because he got hit in the head again and again and again and again and again. So why is it that Maimonides says We left Egypt in a frenzied state. In Maimonides has a text for his Haggadah, and in his Haggadah it says, Bibihilu, with a frenzy, we left Egypt. Why the frenzied haste? Why the running away? Why not just say to the Pharaoh, we're going, and you'll see, and that's it. We are done with Egypt. He didn't agree because of the 3 days. Why? What's the purpose of this ambivalence and this? And the answer is, what the idea of running away from Egypt, and why is recorded in the Torah as an eternal message to all of us. The way to get out of Egypt is by making these small incremental steps, which we don't necessarily identify with, which don't necessarily own, which don't necessarily become part of us. It's just a seed, just a step in the right direction. And that seed, that tiny movement upwards is leaving Egypt. And the Talmud says, when someone has $100, it makes them want to have $200. If you have $200, you want to have $400. That step you make, that departure from what you're used to in the right direction, that seed allows there to be growth, allows there to be something to rest on. I don't know if I'll find the letter right now. Another very powerful letter of the Rebbe, this same theme. I found the first letter now, but I think I translated it correctly. The other letter I wanted to share with you, I can't find right now, but basically the idea is that the Rebbe speaks about how the atom bomb comes from this tiny sliver of the world. This tiny sliver contains such power. But how do you get the power out of that tiny sliver of matter? By shaking it up. So imagine the power of spirituality, the tiny sliver of the power of spirituality. This is a tiny sliver of power of the physical world. Imagine the power of your spirituality. Imagine you as a Jew, as a part of God in you. Imagine taking a sliver out of that. The Rebbe, in this letter that I'm quoting, he mentions a story of one of the great leaders of the Jewish people who observed his grandson playing a game of hide and go seek. And what happened was, in the middle of the game, other children run away, other children leave, and this poor guy is left hiding, and no one's looking for him. As grandfather said, this is the way it is with God. God hides. He wants us to look for him. He wants us to make that move to look for him. You're in a state of confusion. It's ambivalent. You're not sure what to do, but that's how you discover the atom bomb, the infinite strength you have within yourself, the ability to make the difference that you seek to make in the world. It's similar to the way the atom causes that explosion in the negative sense. The atom causes explosion by being shaken up, by being split. In a similar way, the atom bomb in the positive sense, which is within the soul of a Jew, how do you find that? It happens by God hiding and you're looking. And then there concludes that letter, interesting line. He says, nowadays, you don't have to really be shaken up that much because things are pretty obvious nowadays. We live in a time where we can see, what's really going on. We can see who is really taking care of us and who's taking care of the world. And the world's, we see that we're in good hands. And therefore, it doesn't take that much looking, much searching, but just to publicize and to come face to face with the reality of God. So bottom line is, stealing the Afikomen spiritually means to make a move that it's not yours. It's not your own move yet. You're making a move towards something which isn't yours yet. And yet that sliver, that tiny movement is like the tiny movement of the atom, which allows it to be an incredibly huge explosion for good. Let's conclude with one more story and let you guys go. Rabbi Chaim Gundikol Shalom. I had the privilege to study. I received my rabbinical ordination from him. Rabbi Chaim Gundnik told me that, actually he shared a story in Gem. He shared a story about how he's a very gifted orator. And the Rebbe told him that he should try to make his speeches have a practical implication. You should think of something practical people are going to do. And the next sermon, he took this to heart and he said, everyone, I want to ask you a personal favor. You guys come to the synagogue, the Elwood Synagogue in Melbourne. I want to ask everyone here to keep Shabbos a little better than before. For example, your doctors will also be happy with your decision if you decide not to smoke on Shabbos. And the next Shabbos, Rabbi Gundnik says a guy shows up to the synagogue. What's this guy doing here? And the next week, he said, Rabbi Gundnik, I'll tell you what happened. I went to my office, as I do every Saturday. and I wanted to have a cigarette. And then I remember your sermon, your personal request. I said, I'm not going to take the cigarette. What are we going to do over here in the office? I started pacing in the office. I couldn't. So I just came to the synagogue. And it came to the synagogue again. And we don't have to own the steps that we take. All we have to do is to steal them, to make a step forward in a good way. One good thought, one good word, one good action could tip the scale and bring Mashiach for the whole world. You have to steal a moment, do something that we're not sure of in the right direction, and God blesses that and grants that success to grow to something far beyond what we can imagine, something that is redemptive, that frees us from where we were before, lets us go out of our own personal Egypt. May Hashem help each of us. We should go out of limitations of ourselves, and Hashem should free all of us from limitations of exile. We should see the coming of Mashiach, Karav Mamish. So I wanted to share tonight. Any questions, comments, criticism, tomatoes, or cucumbers? Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Shabbos. That's it.